Snakes are one of the most feared animals on the planet, and the mere sight of one of these reptiles is enough to cause most people to run the other way, afraid of a deadly bite or vicious attack. The tropical dry forests of Ecuador are filled with snakes, and while some of them do have the potential to kill you, something you may not know is that most of the species out here are actually totally harmless, and it's likely that you've never even heard their unique life stories before. Far from the monsters they're made out to be, the snake we're looking for today will change everything you thought you knew about these animals, and may just cure your fear of snakes forever.
I have snake.
Can you grab him?
Snail-eater or cat-eyed? Not sure. Snail-eater! Dude, it's a snail-eater!
No way!
George Jett, I think. Yes, George Jett. No way. This is actually a snake that we really wanted to find here in Ecuador because this is probably the snake that if you are afraid of these animals, not sure about snakes, this is the one you want to look at. This is George Jett's Snail-eater. We have wanted to find this snake ever since we knew that we were coming to Ecuador because snail-eating snakes are some of the most placid animals you could possibly hope to come across. This is a completely wild individual, and yet, look at this. All he's trying to do is figure out what's going on. There's so much to unpack that makes these animals an incredible ambassador for snakes in general, and that is the purpose of today's mission, to get you over your fear of snakes with one of the coolest animals here in Western Ecuador. Looking at his tail, it looks like a male snake to me. The tail is just so long and thin. But this is really what we wanted to show you about the George Jett Snail-eater. It doesn't matter what we do. I can hand it to Evan, I can hold it in my hands, we can do whatever we want. They just don't seem to be bothered by us. And it's interesting because from what we've read about these animals, that is extremely typical for both this species and in fact their entire genus, the genus Dipsas. It's been recorded that these animals never attempt to bite, which is really something you can't say about almost any other group of snakes. And to have one in hand completely wild that's just so calm right off the bat just confirms that that appears to be true. We haven't gotten one single defensive display from this guy for as long as we've been working with him. It's probably the calmest reptile I think I've ever worked with. One thing that may put your fears at ease a little is finding out that this is a completely non-venomous species. In fact, all of the snakes in its genus contain no venom whatsoever. So even if he were to attempt to bite, it would pose absolutely no threat to us, but as we're seeing, it doesn't seem like that will be a problem to begin with. Definitely not. And this species has a very interesting biology, and I think if you come to learn more about them, you may at least come to respect them a little bit more as an animal that has quite an interesting life story. The name Snail-eater reveals a cool point about their biology. This species is primarily known to feed on snails, slugs, and other soft-bodied invertebrates. And a lot of their physical adaptations that make them kind of cute and endearing are actually perfectly suited to that end. So if you take a look at their head, you'll notice that it's actually quite large compared to the width of their body. And the reason it is so big is because they have very powerful muscles that control their jaws that allow them to actually pull snails directly out of their shells. They also have huge eyes compared to the size of their head. They're kind of comically large actually, and it gives them excellent night vision. This is a nocturnal species, so they'll come out at night to feed, and they're active predators, so they'll actually follow the scent trails that are left behind by snails and slugs as they track along the ground, and by flicking their tongue in and out of their mouth, they can take in scent particles that allow these snakes to track their prey over quite large distances. They're really impressive predators, and one of the things we really want to show you is how well these snakes climb. Like many snakes that are semi-arboreal, meaning that they spend some of their lives up in the trees, they are incredibly strong, and putting him in some of the vegetation behind us should really show off how impressive these animals are. Their bodies are really thin and wiry, but they're deceptively strong. Check out how he's able to reach his whole body out to grab the branch in front of him, and you'll see as he gets moving how fluidly they can climb through the trees. Now, it's really exciting for us to be able to see this species at all because this is actually an endemic species here in Ecuador. They're only found in this area, and unfortunately, this species is currently classed as vulnerable to extinction. They're not officially endangered, but because so much of their historic range has been fragmented fragmented for human use, there's not much habitat remaining that can still support this species. Even in areas where they are found, they're considered uncommon to extremely rare. They have a pretty specialized diet, so in order to be supported, they do need a healthy prey population, and if we're seeing them here, that's a good sign that it can still support some of Ecuador's most incredible endemic species. Now he's made it to the end of the branch here, so I'm just gonna pick him up one more time. Wow. Still as calm as any snake I could ever imagine working with. And the bottom line is this: whether you're afraid of snakes or whether looking at this animal has given you a newfound respect for them, we have to continue to coexist with snakes here in Ecuador and all over the world. Snakes are extremely important, and they have functions in their ecosystems that we can barely even begin to understand. If we lose these animals, we will lose something about these habitats that is completely irreplaceable, and we have no idea what the damage could be. So if you are afraid of snakes, I hope that this is one animal that you don't have to be so scared of anymore, because they won't do anything. They're just the calmest snakes you can imagine. And after getting to work with this guy, I really think that this is one of my favorite snake species now. They're just so much fun to work with. Super placid, super charismatic, definitely a snake that I think is not worthy of fear, but is worthy of a lot of respect and admiration. Look at that guy. They don't mean us any harm. Snakes aren't out here to get us, and this is probably the best example that we could have hoped to find here in Ecuador. So now it is time to release him exactly back where we found him, and hopefully you have come to find a new reason to appreciate snakes rather than fear them. We're gonna put him back right into this scrap pile that he was hiding in. Hopefully he can get back to sleep. All right, buddy. There you go. Back in your home. That is what we love to see. An endemic species here in Ecuador, back in the habitat where he belongs.
In our many years of working with snakes, we have found that the majority of people are afraid of these animals due to a fear of harm to themselves, as they think that any snake they find is going to attack them and deliver a venomous bite. Consider this though, there are over 3,900 snake species in the world, but only around 200 of them are actually capable of killing a person. Even those that could hurt a human are typically very reluctant to do so, as they'd much rather escape unharmed than confront a creature that they perceive as a potential predator. This means that the fear people feel about snakes is really rooted in misunderstanding, especially about the true diversity of life stories that they carry out. Snakes are just as complex and diverse as any other group of animals, and we want to remind people that many of them are as harmless, inoffensive, and calm as any animal you could work with. The George Jett's Snail-eater is a great example of a snake that you don't need to fear, because the truth is that not only are they not capable of hurting you, they will never even try. These animals are just trying to survive and support themselves, and as long as you give them a respectful amount of space, they will do just that without ever causing a problem for people. If you enjoyed this episode and want to learn the truth about one of Ecuador's most feared and misunderstood snakes, check out this video where we get up close and personal with the black-tailed boa. And with that, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.